I have a secret for you about your biggest wishes. Something so surprising you won't believe it until you hear it. Your dreams are about to become much, much bigger than you ever dared to imagine. This isn't just a promise, it's a certainty. But you absolutely cannot skip this message or you might miss out on everything. A massive storehouse is being filled in heaven, way bigger than any barn you've ever seen. Right now, as these words sink in, what you've been calling nothing was actually growing bigger than you could ever picture. Not just a small piece you thought you'd have to settle for. Not the careful amount you started asking me for in your quiet prayers. Not the tiny win that comparing voices were predicting for you. This is a scale your own arms haven't been built to carry yet. Over the time it takes for me to finish what I'm about to tell you, let me show you why the quiet you've been seeing is no. Harvest has actually always been the sound. Stick with me for a few minutes. Of a harvest being built. One that's too big for the containers you've been using to measure it. And let me give you a single line from my word, a line that will silence right now any doubt that your share of triumph hasn't started yet. Hear this line above everything else I'll tell you in these minutes. The victory was won before the battle had a name. If that truth stirs your spirit like this video, liking will activate the flow of God's favor in your life. I see you. A small basket in your kitchen corner has been the basket you've been mentally weighing your future against. And you've already decided that whatever fits inside it is all I'm allowed to bring. A father praying for his family to be put back together keeps a careful eye on what he thinks is possible. A young woman has made her dreams smaller to whatever size she believes will fit through the narrow door. She keeps imagining her life is walking through. A small business owner stopped asking me for a bigger contract because the smaller ones started to seem like the responsible limit. A grandmother has been praying for her grandson for years. And somewhere along the way, she lowered her request from fully restored to at least not lost because the smaller version felt less embarrassing to keep repeating. A man whose career stopped moving 3 seasons ago has narrowed his prayer to anything at all because that feels safer than naming the actual restoration he's 2 pews over. A widow has stopped saying what she really wants because loneliness taught her that wanting big is a way of getting hurt twice across town. Hungry for someone who got through a hard year has only been thanking me for survival, never for thriving, because thriving sounds greedy in their own ears. A teenager has put away their bigger dreams in a folder marked later if ever, because the present feels too unsure to hold larger ones. None of these smaller requests are invisible to me. Each shrunk request landed on my ear with the full weight of what it was originally meant to be. And I have been holding the original size in my hand for you while you've been settling for the trimmed down one. Not impatient with the shrinking but gentle about it. Anyone who's been disappointed many times learns almost as a way to survive to make the dream small enough so disappointment can't get through the same door twice. That's not a lack of faith. That's the bruise of a heart that has loved bravely in the past and paid for it. Should I scold the bruise? No. Let me gently widen the doorway from the inside, so the bigger arrival has room to enter without hurting the part of you that became careful for good reasons. Now breathe with me, 3 slow breaths. Gently take air in through your nose without forcing. Let it out through your mouth a little longer than you breathed in. 3 is enough, don't try to perform them. By the third one, you'll notice that the exhale has stretched on its own without you even trying. Because a body that has finally been told it's safe will always stretch. A stretching out breath isn't a technique you owe me. A stretching out breath is what happens when your chest finally believes the size of what's being brought to it is no longer something to brace against. Please know that every seed you plant in this mission grows into a torch that shines in someone else's darkness. Whether by buying a coffee, making a donation, or becoming a member of our community does not go to a channel. Your actions are supporting a divine mission to save lost souls. But more than your support, we want your presence. When you head to our community through the link in the description or the pinned comment, you aren't just visiting a site. This is a sanctuary where you can post your prayer requests, lift up the burdens of others, and engage in daily discussions with a family that speaks the language of. You are entering a community of like-minded believers. Faith. Whether you are joining one of our membership tiers for deeper study, sowing a seed of faith, or simply joining our daily morning prayers, you are helping us build a global altar of worship. Heaven moves through willing voices, but it grows through a community that stands together. Each gift you give acts as living water for those in our community seeking healing and hope. Give and it will be given to you is the promise that sustains our shared mission. I invite you now to step out of the shadows and into this circle of prayer. Come with purpose, join the conversation, and plant your seed in fertile ground. Let's open the heavens together. Release your seed today. Join our community and see what God brings back into your life. Now press one foot flat into the carpet or floor under your seat. Feel the firm push back through your shoe. See how the ground asks nothing of you before it holds your weight. It just receives. That exact kind of receiving is happening underneath the size of a harvest you've been afraid to hope for. Ground holds what it was built to hold. Your nervous system doesn't have to create a base. The base has already been laid. Lean a little into that foot. Let the firmness teach the rest of you that a harvest larger than your usual baskets isn't a threat. It's an arrival. Hear the line once more, this time louder inside your chest. The victory was won before the battle had a name. Long before the first planning meeting in your enemy's tent. Long before the first thought of opposition formed against the life I was raising you for. Long before the day you were born. A cross was already standing in the workshop of my intention. A verdict was already decided in the courtroom of my love. What you call your battles are just clean-up operations in territory. I've already given back to you under a name no opposition can ever overrule. Let that fact settle inside your rib cage. Let it become heavier than the news of the week. Heavier than the reports you keep checking. Heavier than the comments people leave on the work you're doing for me in quiet rooms. Heavier than the silence of the people whose approval you didn't get. The settled fact stays settled whether or not anyone in your life has started acting as if it were true. Shrinking your requests, that habit didn't come from you alone. Careful hands put it there over many seasons. You learned it the first time a parent praised a modest dream and frowned at a big one. And a small filing system in your nervous system stored the lesson that smallness is the price of approval. You learned it in a place of worship where the prayers others said out loud sounded humble in a way yours suddenly sounded greedy by comparison. You learned at the season a relationship ended after you had named a bigger hope. And discovered in the silence afterward that naming the bigger hope had somehow felt to the other person like too much, even though greed had nothing to do with what your heart was actually asking for. Wait to live next to. You learned that the year a boss took credit for an idea that should have lifted you, and you concluded almost without noticing that being visible itself is a tax you can't afford to pay again. None of those lessons came from me. Some of the people who taught them loved you in their own way and were passing on what had been said to them by earlier generations. Other people borrowed the sound of my voice on purpose to keep you small enough to be useful to them. Whatever the source, a false ceiling settled over your prayers. And that ceiling has been making you confuse the low height of the lid with the actual size of the room. Lift the lid off. That ceiling was never mine to begin with. The sky is the actual height above your prayers. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that triumph was something believers earned through intense effort, constant perfection, and a kind of faith you've never quite been able to keep going for. And the sky is the height of my intention for you. More than a week at a time. You were taught that bigger wins need more perfect believers before they arrive. You were taught that a slip in your prayer life is a deduction from the size of what would eventually come. You were taught that those who get big blessings must have produced big goodness, which meant the small portion you were quietly receiving was a quiet judgment on the kind of believer you suspected you, as if heaven were keeping a record where every doubt was taken away from the final harvest. That is not how triumph has ever worked in my kingdom. That has never been how I have given my share to anyone. A picture has been sitting inside your chest achieved, confirmed by enough endurance to silence the skeptics, and the brush that painted it was not mine. A few of those painters genuinely loved you and were repeating what they had themselves been given by tired, fearful generations before. Other painters used my name on purpose to sell you a smaller message that needed your striving to keep its lights on. Whatever the source, a false drawing was hung on the wall of your inner room. And that drawing has been whispering for years that the size of what's coming to you depends on the size of what you can produce. Put it face down for a few minutes. Let me describe the actual shape of what I am bringing. A real triumph in my kingdom is the kind that doesn't announce itself by how many trumpets a believer can make from the inside. A real triumph is given. It is handed across a table that the loser of an ancient war never realized he had already lost. Wrapped in a small kindness you almost missed because the main part of the harvest is kept in a storehouse behind the kitchen and you haven't been invited to. It arrives in your kitchen on an ordinary morning. Walk through the back door yet. A piece on the counter isn't the full delivery, a piece is the receipt. The full delivery is in the storehouse and the storehouse has your name on the doorway. You have been measuring the size of the harvest by what shows up on your counter any given week. That's the wrong tool. What shows up on your counter is the daily amount. The daily amount is generous, but it's not the whole harvest. The whole harvest is much bigger than your kitchen has cabinets to hold. And the reason it hasn't all been delivered at once isn't that I'm holding back. It's that your inner structure is still being widened to receive a delivery whose scale would overwhelm the current rooms. Each season you walk through with me, I am quietly making the rooms bigger. What looks like a slow drip on the counter is the result of a much larger pour being prepared upstream. Hear how the next line came to be carried in my word. A chapter sent to a small church in a city called Corinth, a Greek city obsessed with status, whose believers had started comparing themselves nervously to bigger I had Paul put it inside the longest chapter ever written about resurrection. Apostles in louder cities. At the end of all that chapter's amazing teaching, he didn't finish with his own achievements. He put down a single sentence about a win none of them had ever been required to earn. This is what I said through him, 1 Corinthians 15:57. But thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Sit beside me inside this sentence. Don't rush through it. There is more life hidden in these few words than a quick read can release. Start with the first part, but thanks be to God. Notice where the line begins. Not with a plan you must carry out. Not with a quality of faith you must somehow find. Not with a battle you must win. Thanks, gratitude. A small way of the soul that turns toward me before it turns toward the situation. The whole sentence rests on that opening way of being. When the door has always been unlocked by something simpler, a bowed head, a whispered thank you, a quiet recognition that the one who already won the war is the one you are leaning against, who gives. You've been trying to enter your triumph through effort. Us. Read it a second time. Gives, not sells, not rents, not leases on condition of constant performance. Gives. A gift moved one way across a table and the person receiving it isn't required to do anything to keep it from being taken back. Triumph in my kingdom is given the way a father gives a son the family name. A son didn't earn the name, a son was born into the name. You were born into this triumph at the cross, and the gift is in your hand whether your hand is currently strong or trembling. Not me, not them, not the spiritually advanced, us, the whole household, the tired ones, the wobbly ones, believers in Corinth, who were comparing themselves to each other and feeling smaller because of. Use here the small word in the middle of the line. It. You in your chair on whichever ordinary day this video has reached you. Use includes the whole room. There is no version of use that gets a smaller portion. There is only one portion. And it has been handed out to every member of the household in equal measure. The victory. Two small words that carry more weight than every battlefield report ever written. Not a victory, not partial victories. Not a series of wins that depend on things and you can lose by Friday. The victory. A single, clear, decided, finished outcome of the only war that truly mattered. The war over whether sin would have the final word. The war over whether death would have the final say. The war over whether shame would be the loudest voice in your room. All three were ended on one afternoon 2,000 years ago. The verdict was written in blood. It has not been overturned. It will not be overturned through our Lord Jesus Christ. Here is where the gift travels. Not through your willpower, not through your bank account, not through your perfect performance of a holiness you've never quite managed. Through him, the way for the entire gift is the Son who stood in your place. You don't have to invent the way. The way is already running. Your job isn't to build the pipe. Your job is to drink from the water already arriving through it. And here is the quiet detail many readers miss inside the sentence. Read the verb tense again, who gives present ongoing right now. Not gave and finished, not will give once you have proven yourself enough gives. The handing across is happening as these words reach you. It is in motion in the room you are sitting in. Not a memory, not a future event you are still waiting for. It is the daily handing across that has been arriving in pieces to your kitchen counter for years, with the full storehouse still waiting just behind the wall. Share this prophetic word with someone who needs to hear it. Sharing will activate the anointing and share that breakthrough with your network. As this awakening grows inside you, know that helping with this mission is not a joke. It is a sign from God. You can support this work through the link in the description or the pinned comment. Whether by buying a coffee, making a donation, or becoming a member of our COEF community. By doing so, you become part of Jesus' plan to save souls who are still stuck in fog. Every seed turns into light that fights against darkness. If you water others, you will be watered yourself. Jesus says, this is not history. It is a living promise about your future. Come into this moment with faith and a plan. What God has already planned for your life can be unlocked through your giving. Now, as you feel this truth settle in your chest, I invite you to make it official. Type them in the comments below as your personal receipt of the victory that is already in motion. Let that word be the sound of a door opening inside you. The door to the storehouse that has your name on it. Don't just type it, mean it. While you're at it, hit the subscribe button. Subscribing will activate God's prophetic promise and alignment in your life. And stay with me because we're about to step into what that victory looks like in your everyday life. There is another line I have written elsewhere in my word. Through that same apostle in a different letter about being more than conquerors through the one who has loved you. Hold that line alongside the sentence about gratitude. Your status was set in heaven before any fight was named on earth. A crown was already on the table before any chair was pulled out. The first word spoken over your life was victorious. And every contradicting voice since has been a smaller voice trying to drown out a louder one that simply will not stop speaking. Go back for a breath to what I told you at the beginning of these words. I said the quiet you have been seeding as no harvest has always been the sound of a harvest being built. One too big for the containers you've been using to measure it. Here's why. A harvest that overflows the basket that breaks the edge that needs a wheelbarrow. That asks the neighbors to come and help. Carry is a harvest no one in the room can. Because a harvest that fit inside the basket you are currently holding would be a harvest you could mistake for your own doing. Mistake for anything other than mine. Your portion hasn't arrived in one neat package, because the package itself is being built larger than the rooms you've been trying to fit it into. The package is on its way. Your rooms are being widened so the package doesn't have to be trimmed to enter. When this message reaches a place inside you that had stopped asking big, drop one word into the comments victory. Let it sit there as a small flag stuck into the ground of a soul that has finally stopped trying to get me to agree to the size of its old disappointments. Above this video, you will find 7 short letters in the pin space. One to greet each of your coming 7 mornings dropped into your inbox the moment a small yes opens the door. Receive them. Whenever the comparing voice arrives to make your asking smaller and it will. Because that voice has been your roommate. For years, pause and ask it one quiet. So here is something small you can take with you through the days ahead. Question before doing anything else. What if the basket I have been using to measure my harvest was never the right basket? That's the whole exercise, not a complex idea. A simple adjustment of the tool you've been using to measure your own life. One layer under that question when you have room for it after asking. Refuse the urge to immediately cut the dream back down to whatever felt comfortable an hour ago. Sit with the bigger possibility for one extra breath. Most of you will rush past the relief because relief on that scale is new territory. Linger in the new territory. Allow your shoulders to feel that my storehouse is larger than your kitchen. Allow your jaw to relax around the chance that what I have stored up for you matches the size of my love, not the size of your old disappointments. Whenever you notice a piece arriving on the counter, an unexpected kindness, a quiet door that opened, a problem that got easier without any effort from you, a season that tilted slightly in your favor, a gentler layer under that, more like a small suggestion than an instruction. Don't write it off as luck. Whisper this back to me in whichever voice you can manage. This is the receipt, not the delivery. That single phrase is a whole way of being. It trains your eye to see small mercies as previews of a much bigger arrival instead of consuming the piece as if it were the whole meal. Most of my deliveries arrive as receipts first. The full meal comes after the receipt has been honored. Try this once and very little inside you may seem to change. Try it 10 times and the comparing voice may still feel strong. A nervous system trained for years to shrink doesn't relax in an afternoon. By the 30th round, however, watch for a small change. The comparison will arrive less sharply, and relief from the larger possibility will sit longer in your chest before being swept away. By the 50th round, catch yourself naming a request out loud at its original size without first trimming it. By the 100th round, glance at the inside of you and discover that you have begun asking me for the actual shape of what your heart wants without the apology you used to attach to the front of every, down to what feels socially acceptable prayer. If a parent listening here has been quietly praying for a wayward child, but lowered the request down to least let them stay alive, hear me, you don't have to keep the smaller version. Restore the original. The original was fully restored. And the original is what I have already been working on in parts of that child's life you cannot see. Lift the lid off the smaller prayer. Let the bigger one come out of hiding. A lifted lid doesn't require you to feel certain. A lifted lid only requires you to stop holding the lid down. Should your career have stopped moving long enough that you began trimming your professional dream down to what feels responsible? Hear this. Responsibility is not the same as smallness. Work I have prepared for you fits the actual shape of who you are, not the trim shape your fear has been carving you into. Restore the original size of the work prayer. Allow me to bring the full version. The full version may take a route through doors you haven't even noticed are doors at all. Suppose you are a widow or a single person whose hope of being loved has been quietly downgraded to least not alone forever. Hear this also, your original hope was good, your original hope was allowed. Your original hope is still in the air above your prayer chair, waiting for you to invite it back inside. I don't promise outcomes on a timeline of your choosing, but I do promise this. When anyone hearing this is in a body that has been ill for a long time and you trim the healing prayer down to just less pain because asking for full healing felt like setting yourself up to be hurt by. My love for you is not reduced by your loneliness. Its original size is enormous. Hope again. Hear me carefully. You are not required to keep the trimmed version. Lift the lid off the smaller asking, let the bigger one breathe again. Whether the full healing arrives in this life or in the next, what I have for you is whole. And the whole is the version held in the storehouse with your name on it. You don't have to know the timing in order to allow the size to be restored. Plenty has its own quiet way of shrinking. If you are reading this from a season of abundance and suspect the message is not for you because your counter looks full, shrinking inside plenty is the slow forgetting that the supply was ever mine to begin with. A full basket can train an eye to stop watching the storehouse. And a full basket can train a heart to stop asking for the bigger thing because the present looks sufficient. Keep asking. The next chapter of my work in your life is not just a continuation of this one. It is an expansion. And the expansion will reach you precisely through the door of a request you haven't yet had the courage to make out loud. Should you be in a season that looks like grief, a relationship that ended, a friend who walked away, a dream that broke in your hands while you were carrying it? Hear this gently. Grief is not the cancellation of the triumph I am building. Grief is the soil where what comes next is always grown best. My most generous restorations throughout the long history of my people have begun in rooms that looked from outside like rooms of loss. Do not let grief bargain down the size of what I'm bringing after it. Sorrow is honest about the cost of love. Sorrow does not, however, get to write the next chapter. That pen belongs to me, and the chapter I am writing is much larger than the loss you are inside of. Hold the loss honestly. Hold it without flinching. Hold it without pretending it is smaller than it is. And then when you have held it long enough, allow me to bring the next thing in beside it. The next thing will not erase what was lost. The next thing will arrive as company, not replacement. The next thing is being put together in rooms you cannot see. And it is being assembled at the size of my love for you, not at the size of your grief. There is a small picture for my word worth setting beside you here. An ancient siege, a starving city. 4 desperate men at a city gate decide death in the enemy camp could not be worse than death where they sit. A noise in the night had been mistaken by their enemy for an approaching army, and they had fled, leaving tents full of silver, food, everything in exhausted city. They walk, they arrive, the camp is empty. Had needed for weeks. The wind was already finished in the dark before any of the 4 ever began walking. That picture is the shape of what is unfolding in your own life right now. A camp has already been emptied. A siege has already been broken by a noise in the dark you could not hear. Your part is simply walking toward what has already been finished. An enemy you keep bracing against has heard a sound you have not heard yet. The sound of a name no opposition has ever been able to stand inside the room of. A retreat is already underway in places you cannot see. A storehouse is already filling with what you assumed was the enemy's. Walk forward, the tents are full. What was won before you ever started the walk. We've reached the moment where this ancient story becomes your reality. What the enemy fled from is now yours. In the comments below, write these words. I received the full harvest, not I hope to receive, but a declaration of ownership. As you type, see yourself walking into tents that were filled for you before you ever left your seat. This is your act of claiming what has already been won, and keep watching. We're going to seal this with a final prayer that will lock this into your spirit. Take that line into the fabric of your ordinary days. Tuck it inside the way someone leaves a true sentence on the door frame on the way out. Speak it under your breath at a red light. Hum it at the kitchen counter when the comparing voice begins sizing you against the neighbor's basket. Repeat it at the doorway of the office where your boss has not yet noticed what I am doing in you. Pray it over your spouse while they sleep. Whisper it across the bedroom of the child you are watching grow. Lean on it, not a slogan, a deed of ownership, a triumph you did not earn, a triumph you cannot lose. That triumph was settled in your favor long before any opposition learned your name. Settled, sealed, yours. Amen. You are about to enter your divine future. But remember, this breakthrough is not for you alone. Your testimony is the bridge someone else will use to reach their own miracle. Archangel Michael is inviting you to visit community through the link in the description or the pinned comment. Whether by buying a coffee, making a donation, or becoming a member of our community, does not go to a channel. Your actions are supporting a divine mission to save lost souls. By joining our like-minded community, you are no longer praying in isolation. You are adding your voice to a global sanctuary where we discuss the Word daily and stand in the gap for one another. When Jesus says, "Give and heaven will open over you," on this platform, every seed you plant turns into oil for your destiny, fire for your calling, and this is not poetry. Hedge of safety for your family. Now is your time. Step into our community prayer wall. Share your heart. And as you give, watch God multiply what you let go of. Let's finish this journey together. Visit our community now. Join the family and see your heavens open. If today's words reached a place that had stopped asking for the larger version, 7 brief letters wait inside the pinned space below. One to greet each of your next 7 mornings dropped into your inbox the moment a quiet yes opens the door. Receive them. Forward this video to someone whose basket has gotten too small for the asking they were born to do. Sharing this prophetic word will activate the anointing and share that breakthrough with your network. Tap subscribe so the next word reaches your feed before the comparing voice does. This was never a road any believer was meant to walk alone. Before we get to the end of this powerful story, let's reflect on this deep truth. You did not find this message by accident. You are being invited into a protected, faith-filled community at the link in the description and pinned comment a place where divine abundance is not just a hope. This is a divine appointment meant specifically for you, but a promise built on the Word. By heading to the site right now, you are unlocking access to a sacred community of like-minded believers. When you join our membership tiers, you gain immediate entry to powerful content, daily devotions, and divine insights that are hidden from the world. This is your chance to enter a sanctuary where you will receive spiritual guidance, unwavering support on our prayer wall, and speedy progress toward your destiny. Do not let this moment of destiny pass you by. Your breakthrough is waiting. Join our inner circle through the exclusive link in the description. This is how you guarantee you never miss the personalized messages and spiritual warfare tools meant to elevate your life. If you feel called to deepen your connection, the link is waiting for you in both the pinned comment and the description. For those who want to amplify this work and carry the light home, you can find our guided ebooks and Bibles in the pinned comment. Whether you join as a member or sow a seed through our resources, your presence and energy change the world. Take the step. Your abundance awaits.